welcome back to GoBox Art Crate as we finish up the third and final ornament in our little Halloween series here. So we have this nice glittery haunted house, which I absolutely love this. I designed this one several years ago and taught it live a couple times. The little pink ghost, I love that one too. And then lastly, we have this cute little ghost sitting on a mushroom. I went a little crazy with the fireflies. You don't have to do as many if you feel like it's distracting. I haven't decided yet. The nice thing is I could go back with black and touch that up, but I thought it was cute. And I love the glitter. If you want glitter on either of these, you've got your Mod Podge that came in your kit and you've got your fine black glitter. One thing you can do, so it's kind of hard because obviously painting Mod Podge around these tiny little things and then relying on it staying wet before you put the glitter on would be really hard. So I think one of the things you could do the eyes on the ghosts in glitter, or you could even outline the ghosts with kind of a line of Mod Podge and then put the glitter over that. So those are options if you feel like you want some glitter. These are double-sided, so you can paint a whole different ghost on the background. Like this one, you could do just the ghost, moon, and mushroom, and then paint Mod Podge and do glitter throughout the background and no stars. So that was something I considered. And yeah, so you've got options. Let's move these aside. I love these. Painting with these, the surface is so nice and smooth and easy to paint on, and you can do some fun detail work because of that. I did a Michael Myers the other day, and that was a little bit of a challenge. But my 16-year-old is really into horror movies, so she thought this was really cool. Except she did tell me like everything about the face that was wrong. You made the chin too narrow here, blah, blah, blah. That's what 16-year-olds are for. So let's go ahead and get started on this. I've got my little 4-inch ornament. One thing to pay attention to is where the hole is drilled. Countless times I've ended up with a crooked ornament because I get way too into what I'm painting and forget to pay attention to where that hole is drilled. So let's pick up our biggest brush. You don't have to dip it in water. We're just gonna do a thin coat of black. Just brush right over that drill hole. Come all the way out to the edges. We want this to be a full coat, but thin, and it's easy to do because this surface is so smooth and it's not going to really suck your paint in like canvas does. And canvas has that texture, which they call a tooth, actually. They call that texture in canvas is called the tooth. And that can be, like, you can't really do a thin, opaque coat with canvas very easily. With this, we can. Yay! So we are nearing mid-September here, like it's different anywhere else. But I'm totally inspired for Halloween. I keep seeing Halloween decorations pop up in all the stores because, you know, retail starts way early. And there's only 40 some days till Halloween. You know what's going to happen. It's going to come up here really quick. And then we're going to get right into Thanksgiving immediately, and then Christmas, and it's just going to whirlwind by us super fast like it always does. Highly recommend starting your Christmas shopping now. So I'm just sort of smoothing out my brush strokes here, going all one direction. Doesn't matter if you pull towards yourself like me or go across this way. Mainly I want this to dry. In fact, I'm going to go back over here. And I can see already it's drying. It dries so fast on this, which is nice. So I'm going to wash my brush off. We don't use the big brush anymore. So we are done with that. While this is drying, I'll just talk to you about the colors, which I should have mentioned earlier in the start. These are the 5 colors that came in the kit when you got the ornament kit. So we've got black and white, phthalo red, craft orange, craft yellow, all great Halloween colors. And yeah, so we made all these ornaments with those 5 colors. I really love this one. I've done this one mainly on the little wood, like tree trunk slices. And I just love it on this because it's such a big, perfectly round size. It works great. Okay, that is drying up good. Let's talk about our design while it dries some more. Oh, and actually real quick, you can paint the edges of this. You can paint the back side. You can do a whole different design on the back, as I said earlier. The edges on this, you'll notice, are a little rougher than this front surface. So it does take a little more paint. It's maybe a tiny bit frustrating to paint the edges, but feel free to do that. You absolutely can. So here's our design. We've got this cute little ghost sitting on a mushroom. He's just contemplating the universe, I guess. I was going, like I said, I was going to do the glitter in the background originally, and then I thought, you know what, it needs stars, and so, because it's not going to be a Jenny painting without stars. So I put stars all over it, and then I thought, oh, how fun it would be to put little fireflies coming up from the bottom. And yeah, you can see where the stars and the fireflies sort of collide, and it's a little chaotic. But in the end, it does look pretty cute. And I'll guide you through how to draw everything out. It is a very simple drawing. And the way the ghost is seated on here, obviously they're lightweight. And so he's just sort of floating on top of this mushroom. So don't worry about like getting everything completely accurate in that way. Like, oh, how heavy would this be? Would he really sit on the top or would he sit on the side? It doesn't matter. He's just floating. And then I'll guide you through painting the moon. You can do a full moon or a crescent moon. In this case, I had a lot of extra room on this side, so I opted to do a full moon. You can make the moon yellow too if you wanted to do something like this one where it's yellow with a little bit of orange. So you have so many options, and the cool thing is if you do an option and you don't like it, just let it dry, paint black over the part you don't like, and start over. That's the cool thing about acrylic painting. All right, I think I've jabbered on enough that this should be dry, and it is just a tiny bit of black coming off. It's okay, it can be a little bit wet because we're going to be starting with white, and the white and black mixed together make gray, and we actually put a lot of gray on this anyway. So let's pay attention to this drill hole. Let's pick up our smallest brush. Anytime I'm sketching anything out, I like to have some water mixed in with my paint just to make life easier. So I'm going to dip my brush in the water, plop a little drop of water next to white, and stir some white into it. So we've got this nice watery mix. Now, if you have a lot of paint on your brush from mixing, you'll want to pull and spin. I had actually a drop of water hanging out there. So I'm going to do that again. Pull and spin, and then redip the tip of the bristles in. Okay, so from this drill hole, we're going to go off at an angle. So if you were looking at a clock face, this would probably be about like somewhere between 4 and 5. And drop down about close to ½ an inch, make a dot. That's where the top of the head right here is going to be. So now I'm going to turn that into a kind of narrow rainbow shape that's angled up towards that drill hole. Keep in mind, everything you do here gets painted over, filled in, all that. So if you make any mistakes, just redraw it. You can touch it up with black if needed. Okay, so now I'm going to come down here, and it's going to start bending out like this. And then the back side comes down like this. And then this is about where I'm going to curve for, this is where his behind would be. Let me straighten that out. And then I'm going to show you how to do the fabric folds. So first we're going to come out like this. Now your ghosts can be long or short. It doesn't matter. They come in all sizes and shapes. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do this middle fold. So it's kind of this triangle shape without a top. And easy to do. So just come down, come right up here, and let's parallel this line first. Come down a little longer. And then you're just going to do this sort of swoop like that. So it's almost like we drew a fancy L. And this one here can come right up and meet it. You can do that same sort of fancy swoop. So the fabric looks nice and drapey. And now I'm going to come down like this. This one may be a little longer too. I like to make them different lengths just to sort of give the impression of very drapey fabric. let's go ahead and bend this out and down. And then you can do a fancy little swoop here. And we've got our ghost shape drawn. Just remember, you can redo anything, so don't panic if you make a little mistake. Sometimes mistakes become happy little accidents, as Bob Ross would say. It's so true. So many of my paintings have had things I consider a mistake and then realize later that, no, wait, this is actually a happy little accident. I like it. So the top of the mushroom, we have just a little bit of it showing, and it can go off the side of the ornament. So right before this bends here, right about here, I'm going to do another kind of half rainbow shape like we did up here. We did this little arch. This is like a half an arch, very top. And then it's going to curve in and out to make a bell shape. And before I draw the bottom of it, I don't want to line it up with this because that can be distracting. So I'm going to actually either come down longer depending on how long your ghost is, or in my case, I'm going to come up a little short, and I'm going to do this little rounded line. And then we've just got this little fat stem. Think about like the Smurfs. They had their little mushroom houses with the little fat stems. So over here, just going to go off the bottom of the ornament. And then on this side, I'm going to, you can either round it out and make it easy, or you can do this fun little, it's almost like this shape reversed, this sort of bell shape. Then I'll just have a look and make sure everything looks okay. Remember, it is sort of a cartoony thing, so it doesn't have to be like exactly 100% in perspective or anything like that. Just try and get it as close as to where you like it. And that's what we want. We want you to like it. And now I'm going to draw the moon shape. Now it can be hard if you haven't done a lot of drawing. It can be really hard to make a perfect circle or close to perfect circle for the moon. So I recommend, if you're a little nervous about doing that, you can find like a bottle cap, like one of these little paint caps, maybe a little big, but that would work. I think this is about the size of a quarter, so if you have a quarter you could trace, that would be perfect. But I'm going to go ahead and freehand it and see how it comes out. So it's just down over here. You've got this nice big space. You can start off by drawing it smaller than you want it and then making it bigger. Just take your time. A lot of times I would end up with an oval shape. So in that case, if you end up with an oval, you just kind of widen out the sides until you have what resembles more of a circle. And there we've got our whole thing sketched out. And then we're just going to start filling stuff in. So let's wash this little brush off. Now I'm going to move our coaster out of the way. Look, they're like the same size, almost identical. Okay, so the moon, let's start with the moon. Now, what I did to have this shaded here is I sort of let my brush run out of white paint as I fill it in, and then just glaze over the dark spots with a thin coat of white. But we can also go back and we can dab black on and then glaze over the black. So there's lots of different ways that you can get here. This actually, it does end up looking like it has a face. I didn't do that on purpose, but I guess it's the man in the moon. You could also do like a Jack Skellington type of face where you'd paint the oval eyes that sort of angle out and the mouth. Just Google a picture of Jack Skellington. That'd be cute if you're really into that. If you're one of those Nightmare Before Christmas lovers, which I am as well. I've done a lot of paintings with Jack Skellington. Okay, so I'm going to pick up my second smallest brush. So I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video, you have your 4-brush pack. We have these on our website they're about $12. They're awesome. I love this type of brush with the nylon bristles. They last forever if you take care of them properly. All you have to do is wash them with warm soapy water every time you're done painting. Let them dry flat on a towel. One of the things that I always forget to tell people, don't let them dry upright like this, because what happens is the water, as it drips down and it's drying, it can actually flare the bristles out at the base of this metal ferrule, which can be problematic. I learned that the hard way. Okay, so let's take this brush, pick up a little white, and I have a lot more white than I want on my brush, so I'm going to swipe some off. So we have just a little ghost layer white. And you can start at the edges of the moon and pull inwards. Now here my brush is starting to run out of paint, which I want. So I'm going to skip over and leave a dark splotch here. And now I'm ready to re-dip my brush in the white, swipe some off. You can turn this as needed. And as you fill in your moon, you might notice that the moon isn't circular enough. It might be an oval or an egg. You just couldn't really see it before until it was filled in. I think I might have that problem here. We'll see. You could make a jack-o'-lantern face on the moon too. That would be fun. Okay, yeah, that's coming along here. So what I have with the moon are bright spots and dark spots. So I'm coming in with the second coat on the edges, pulling inward. Now I am just hazing over these dark splotches with this tiny little layer of paint that's left on my brush. So the big dark area on the moon is called, I believe, the Sea of Tranquility. And it's basically a basin. And because it's sort of indented as like a canyon, it appears darker when we look at it. I thought that's just the prettiest name, the Sea of Tranquility. I love it. It's a waterless sea, basically. Okay. So you can even take your brush, dip it in white, and sort of dab white around. And I'm ending up with a situation where I want to add some black back into the moon so I get more Sea of Tranquility stuff going on here. So I'm going to take, I don't even need to wash my brush. I'll just dip the very corner of it, pick up a tiny little nick of black. You see that? Just a tiny, tiny bit. And I'm going to dab that over here. So thinking of going off memory, I know that big canyon area is right along here. And I'm just dabbing up and down. The wet white paint on the moon is working beautifully with this. It's turning it kind of grayish. And it's really easy to overdo this, but that's okay if you do. We're going to go back and glaze some white back in there. So I know there's a little spot over here too that's smaller. We had the most beautiful full moon the other night. It's September's full moon. I'm going to wash my brush now. And unfortunately, there's some wildfires out in rural areas here in Oregon. And it brought in a ton of smoke. And so the sky all day long was this really ominous orangey yellow. It just looked so dystopian. But at night it had kind of cleared up somewhat. But the moon was, because of the smoke, it was just this vivid orangey yellow. It was like these two colors mixed together. It was amazing. It's just too bad that it was smoke that caused it. Okay, so let's take a little white on the brush, swipe it off. And now do the same thing. Just dab up and down. What this is doing is this is going to soften any harsh spots that you did with the black shading. And I'm taking just the smallest amount of paint at a time. Oh my gosh, there's a tiny little bug walking. I don't even know what kind of bug that is. So itty bitty. It's just going to explore my palette, I guess. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. Okay, I don't think I need to do too much more. This is a process that you can keep going back and forth. You can, oh hey, I eliminated a lot of my good shading. So go back to add some white just like I'm doing right now. You can always go back and, you can go back and add some black in if you eliminated a lot of your shading. And just keep working at it until you get what you like. I'm almost there. Almost there. Just add little bits of paint at a time. It's really easy to overdo, and you really only need the tiniest amount. So these little white dots I'm putting on here, I'm actually going to leave them because if you look at the moon, if you were to look at the moon like through a telescope, you'll see those are little craters, and it's just the edges are more of a relief and the insides are indented, so that's what gives them that like white spot look. Super cool. Okay, there we go. I am going to paint my mushroom white, and the reason I'm painting it white is because when we paint the orange over it later, the orange over black does not make a good color. It makes it kind of brownish, which we do actually shade behind the ghost. We shade sort of a brownish orange color. But for right now, let's just paint it solid white. And so that you don't lose this part of your ghost, I'm using my number 4 brush. You can come right up to it and just leave a really tiny sliver if you feel like you need that. I'm using this thin edge of my brush to do that. That's why I like painting with flat brushes a lot of times, because you can get right into these little areas pretty easily. And then I do turn my ornament a lot. You'll see me doing that quite a bit. It allows me to reach areas without too much stress. One of the things you could do on this particular ornament that would be cute, I'm always thinking of other ideas. You could paint other mushrooms coming up like kind of out at an angle right here. Like, let's see. I've got paper. I'm going to show you real quick. So actually I've got this drawing here. The reason I have this is because I actually started recording the video about an hour ago and realized about halfway through that I had not pushed record on the camera, which is so frustrating. But here I am again, second time around. So if you wanted to, you could put, like, let's say this square ornament is the round ornament. You could do like those enoki style mushrooms, which you would buy at Asian grocery stores. But make them different heights, almost like a little bouquet of flowers. How cute is that? I probably would do 3 if I were doing these. Oh, look, he's looking right at them. So yeah, ideas. We can keep adding and adding. That's if you don't like the idea of the way the stars and fireflies look. All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and start filling in the ghost itself. You can use this same number 4 brush. And let's just come along this side. We paint the black eyes in on the top later, so you can just paint right over the face. Now down here in the folds of the fabric, we're going to do something different, so don't get down through there yet. Wait for me. But the rest of this upper part, you can fill in to your heart's content. I'm not doing a super thick coat of white here because I like to come in and add shading and highlights. So when you're painting this over the black right now, it actually is slightly grayish because it's not super opaque yet. Okay, now that I've gotten down to about here, one thing you'll notice is I have these defined lines, and all I did to keep those on there is so you think about your moon is your light source, so it's going to come in and glance off the edge of this ghost kneecap here. And then I pull in towards this line I drew, this one right here. And as I get close, I'm just gonna leave a little gap. So kind of like what we did here. And then I'll start on this next one. So this fold of fabric is gonna grab a lot of the light because it's kind of bumped up. So think of it that way. Go right up and join into this white. And again, we're pulling down towards this other fold. So those of you guys who did the pink ghost, we did this exact same thing. We had a lot more shading on the pink ghost than we will on this guy, I think. If memory serves. It felt like we did a lot of shading on the pink one. And pull that towards here, just sort of letting your brush run out of paint. Gonna leave a skinny little line here. We add some gray shading in later, so these lines won't be so in your face. And I'll start on this part, the other kneecap. And this you can pull all the way to the edge. Just let your brush kind of run out of the white paint here. If it doesn't totally, that's fine. We're going to shade gray throughout this whole right side of the ghost. Okay, so we have our base coat on here. That's already dry. I might throw on another coat of white. While I've got it on my brush and while this is dry, make this nice and opaque so that that orange really pops later on when we paint it on. This looks like a little string attached to the bottom of the sheet. Ah, the sheet is unraveling. All right, so I think I'll fill in the mushroom stem now. I might have called it a cap earlier, I think. Thinking and painting is hard at the same time. Let's wash this brush and dry it off. And the color on this is just kind of a boring beige. You honestly could do whatever color you want. If you want a yellow stem or a pink stem, you totally can. If you don't like it, just paint over it. But I will show you how to mix the kind of boring beige. It's basically, if I remember, okay, so it's white. Let's mix in some yellow. Mix in some orange. And then we'll mix in a little black, just a little bit at a time, because the black is going to overpower this immediately. So I'm just going to scrape off quite a bit less black than I did on the other colors. See that? Look at it overpowering. So yeah, this is just kind of a brownish beige. You can tweak it a little bit if you want it more orange. Just grab a little more orange and throw it in there. If you want it more yellow, you can do that. It's not the most attractive color, but it's very natural. Very mushroomy. And I have quite a lot of paint on my brush from mixing. This area is not super detailed, like we're filling in the whole thing, so you can still use your brush. But as you get in the smaller parts, you might wipe your brush off and then just redip the tip of the bristles and use that thin edge to come right up along here. This mushroom stem gets some shading too. If you need to switch to your smallest brush to get in any of these small areas, please do so. I'm trying to cover up my white outlines so they're not there anymore. And this may need a second coat. Hold on to this color if you can, because we do add some black to it for shading this area later. This starts off really light, as you can tell. It's very different. In fact, my color here, I think, was more of a gray. I probably had more black in this mix. but we have a lot of black going on in this painting, so having it a slightly brighter color is not going to be a bad thing at all. Okay, I'm going to wash the brush and go back to the ghost now. We actually draw this hand on in a little bit, but for now I want to get some brightness and shading going in here, and plus another coat of the white. So let's start off, again, number 4 brush, white paint. Let's come along the left side of the head here. That's where your brightest white is going to be. Letting that brush run out of paint as I move towards the right. And we'll come along here. If you have too much paint on your brush for this tiny little strip, I want you to wipe it off and then just pull towards that line. You can even dab your brush very lightly over that line to sort of reduce the strength of the line, so it's not super in your face. And I'm going to take some bright white along here. Same thing, pull it down towards. We're basically doing a repeat of what we did when we first filled in the ghost, just to get it more opaque, even though they're technically transparent. A sheet ghost is not transparent. I always think when I draw these kinds of ghosts, I think about the Charlie Brown Halloween, the Great Pumpkin. It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. I think that's what it's called. Something like that. When Charlie Brown makes his sheet ghost costume and he cuts all the holes all over in the whole entire thing. I think that's so cute and funny. I grew up in that era. Like, I was born in the 1970s and kind of young child in the 1980s. And gosh, all those shows they were on, we watched them all the time. Loved them so much. They are part of my youth. Okay, this area you can see I didn't really put a second coat there because we're going to shade some gray in there anyways. I do want to come down in here with a little white and clean up this bottom edge. I'm using my smallest brush to do that. If you need to do that, you can. I like to, like right here, if it's too rounded, I want to make it kind of come down to a point. I can't unsee that it looks like my ghost is wearing bell bottoms with 3 legs. Okay, so let's go ahead now and get some of the gray shading in, and then we'll draw the arm, and we further shade and highlight the arm so that it looks like it fits in. At first, it's not really going to look like it fits in too much. Let's take the tiniest little nick of black. See, I just picked up a little corner. Pop it down here, and let's add some white to it. How dark do we want this gray? Well, it's kind of a medium gray, so I'm going to add a little bit more black. Usually, I start off being a little bit too conservative with how light and dark I make the color. So I'll get it brushed on and realize, oh, I made it way too light. But I think this is about right. I'm just going to hold that up there. And now I'm going to come down along the right side of the ghost. Just use the thin edge of your brush for right now. And we're going to go all the way down here, all the way down to the bottom. So you've got this line of wet paint here. And now I want to probably wipe my brush off a little bit and just start pulling that wet gray paint inwards. I probably have a little bit too much paint on my brush, but that's okay. It's an easy fix. It would just be a little bit more dramatic shading than that one, but not a whole lot. So right now I've got wet white and wet gray, and that is exactly what I want. I'm going to wash my brush because it's going to dry ultra fast, this paint. So I washed and dried my brush, and now I'm just going to go over the seam where the 2 colors meet. I think my brush is too wet. And sort of feather those out so they blend a bit better, so we don't have like this harsh line. And I can tell I had a little bit too much water on my brush. I'm just going to wipe that off with my finger. And now I'm going to take a bit of white just the tiniest amount and soften up the edge of the shading too. So this works great if your gray and white has dried too much and you can't get them to blend together. Just take your lightest color, which in this case would be the white, tiny little bit on the tip of the bristles, and come in working on the light side, letting your brush run out of paint, and then going into the gray. That's how you'll soften up that shading. And now I feel like I've reduced my gray line down a bit more than I want to. So I'm going to go back to the gray and just add a little bit more in here. If you find that the paint is not sticking very well, that just means this needs to dry for a couple minutes or so till it becomes sort of sticky and tacky. Because what will happen with acrylic paint is if the base coat that you put on is too wet and you try to put a second coat on top of it, it tends to just push the base coat around rather than letting the second coat adhere to it. So yeah, I'm just working more of this gray in, which is already dried on my palette, so I need to make some more. I feel like I never quite mix enough paint, especially when working with such a small surface. You know, I know I'm not going to need a huge amount of paint, but still sometimes mix too little. So yeah, you can always go back to just flip-flopping between the dark gray and the white. Just clean your brush in between. So this whole area is away from the moonlight and is going to be in shadow, just like that. And then this area needs to be in shadow, and this one too. So right through here, I'm just going to use this gray, and I make kind of a triangular shape right here. Go right up to your black line there. Now that line here is really harsh, and it just makes this look too geometric, too angular. So what I want to do is I'm going to wash my brush, dry it off better than I did last time, and then sort of dab, just like we did here, just soften up the line. And now, yeah, the gray has already dried too much, so I'll take a little tiny bit of white and just dab that in there. Look at that, softening it up so good. It's so satisfying. I love it. Before it looked like a pressed sheet, and we don't want that. This ghost does not press its sheets. Just going back over it with a little gray again. I have a couple little mess ups down here where adding shading and white, I sort of messed up the bottom edge of the sheet here, so it's a little bit jagged. I'll just touch that up with black in a little bit. All right, now we need to add, again, my paint has dried up, a little bit of that gray along here. We have a very small area to work with, so it's not too much. Here. Turn this just a bit. Okay, while that dries up, I'm going to touch up a couple areas I see that could use a touch-up. A very small amount of black on the tip of the bristles of the tiny brush. I've got a little extra bump here. He's got a wart. And then the bottom of this sheet is a little jaggedy looking, which in some cases might look kind of cool, more Halloween-like. There, I think that is okay. All right, let's let the ghost dry for a bit. Actually, let's draw the This isn't super wet. It's mostly dry. As we know, it dries so fast. Let's go ahead and paint the cute little hand on. So I made it really short. It's not a super long arm. It's just like we're just seeing the hand sort of bump out of this sheet. And at first I made it too long. It didn't look quite right. So let's err on the side of making it too short, because you can always make it longer. Littlest brush. I'm going to start with this gray color I have because it's a lot easier to just blend the gray in if you make a mistake than it is to blend the black in. So right about here, I'm just imagine it like it's a mitten, so you don't make it too big. It's just a little mitten poking out there. And that looks about right. I actually did err on the side of making it a tiny bit too small. And now I'll wash my brush, and because I know that I like the shape of that, I'm going to trace right over it with black. But you don't want to load up your brush a ton, just a little. Just trace right over that. And then what we'll do later is we'll shade the bottom side and highlight the upper side so that it fits in more with the rest of the ghost body. But we want it to dry for now. And we'll work on our mushroom. Okay, so let's start with the shaded area, which is just under the ghost. So the moonlight being here is going to make the ghost cast a shadow down this way. And then as we get out here, we'll see the true color of the mushroom, which is that orange. You can do the mushroom in pink if you want, yellow, any color that seems good to you. I just did it in orange. I thought about mixing pink and orange together. That's kind of a fun color too. But let's do the shaded area first. I'm using my number 4 brush again. This is the star of the show today, I guess. Plop down a little orange. Now pick up with the corner of your brush just a nick of black and mix that in. As you see, the black really overpowered it right away. I'm going to add some more orange back in there. I do want it in a shade. So I need the black in there. This is not a pretty color. Actually, it's a good fall color. Like if you were to have a sweater in that color, that's a good fall color. Maybe a little more orange mixed in would be prettier. Okay, just coming right around the back area of the ghost, and you can eliminate that little black line or leave it just a bit. I left it just a bit so it stands out nice now. Pull this towards the right. And if you need to use the small brush, I'll just dip that on there to come across the top here. My hand always shakes a lot when I use this small brush. Usually it's because I had too much coffee, which I did. I had to get up early. The teenagers back in school. Oh my gosh, my body's not ready for getting up that early and making food. Okay, so now this is a good shaded area behind the ghost. I want to wash the brush, working while that's still wet. Dry it off really good, and now just go right for the plain orange. Gonna knock some paint off here, and now come in and overlap the edge of these two colors together. So the shading sort of fades into this darker orange color. And you can use the thin edge of your brush to get along the bottom area. This will need a second coat, most likely, to get it more opaque and pretty. Yeah, so I am going to repeat that process in just a bit when this dries so that we have a little bit more opacity to work with. But the idea there is just where I want it. So I'll let that dry. And now I'm going to shade the mushroom stem. So we've got this color here. And if you need to paint some more on, that's totally fine. You can get a second coat starting over here on the, just start on the right side. And as you get towards the middle, just let your brush run out of paint. Because over here it's going to be shaded. So you could leave it like this. But actually when this dries, it's probably going to blend in a little too much. So I'm going to take now a little nick of black. using the corner of the brush, add it to your color until you get a shade of this color. So that didn't darken it quite as dramatically as I want it to, so I'm gonna add a little more black. And again, think about this ghost casting a shadow. And also the cap of the mushroom is going to cast a shadow down in here too. So come along the bottom edge all the way across. And really the only part of this mushroom stem that would maybe have some light would be down in here. So maybe there's a little backlighting happening from the moon. And now what I want to do is I want to wash my brush and come back in with the lighter, wash and dry it. Come back in with the lighter color, just like we did with the gray and white. And let those two sort of intermingle so that the blend is a little softer. There. Okay, yeah, so I've got a definite shaded area, definite highlighted area, and just like the ghost is, highlighted and shaded. While that dries, and while this mushroom cap dries a little bit more, this should be dry. So I'm going to highlight this top edge and shade the bottom edge. So we want to use white in the littlest brush. Not a lot of paint, because you don't want a big glob to work with, because this is a tiny area. Now you can reduce your black outline by just painting from the inside edge with the white and thinning it out. And this highlight can come up here, like maybe the arm sort of comes up here. And just sort of let it fade out. If you need to wipe your brush off and sort of spread the paint up here and let it fade out, you can. And now we need gray to shade the bottom edge. And my gray is of course all dry. So I'll mix some more. And I'm just gonna shade down the bottom half of the arm. And if you end up with too harsh of a line, you want to soften that up. Just wash and dry your brush. My paint's still wet enough that I can just dab over the line where the two colors meet. And that worked. You can, again, keep repeating the process until you get it how you want it. If you need to re-outline the black, you can. But it doesn't have to be a super harsh black, because there's no real black outlining on the ghost itself. And this, even this down here, had turned sort of dark gray because of how we glazed over those folds. I do have a spot I want to touch up with white. Right along here, it's sort of not sharpened up enough. And yeah, you can do that now if you want. If you want to take and do like a more ultra highlight along the edge of the ghost. So it'd be all along the left side of all of these parts, each fold. It's subtle, but it's there. Okay, we're done with this little brush for right now. We're gonna go back to the number 4 and we're gonna fix up this mushroom. So right now you can see all my little brush strokes, and that's just because the coat of paint is very thin and needed a second coat. So I'm gonna go back to my dark shade. It's dark burnt orange, which I said was not a pretty color, but as I look at it more and more, I actually really like it. Wash the brush, dry it off real good, go right to the orange. Gonna knock off excess paint right through here through the middle. Then as your brush is running out of paint, then you can start mixing, come along the edge of the darker and light color and let them mingle together. Okay. I do feel like I've got one spot where maybe the paint was too wet and the shaded paint does not want to adhere very good. So I'll let that dry. I'll plan on touching that up in a bit and we'll work on other stuff. We want to put the eyes on the ghost. And if you did this one along with me, I did 2 little dots first to place the eyes, and then we turned those into the oval shape. So you'll want to use your littlest brush. You can mix a little water with the paint if you feel like you need it. These are so small, we'll probably be okay. So I'm just going to grab the tiniest dot of black. And now the eyes we're sort of looking at a 3/4 view of this ghost. We're not seeing full front on, and we're not seeing a profile. It's sort of 3/4 view. So I have the eyes just sort of close together, one real close to the edge. Just put a little dot and then the other one there too. And you can turn those into ovals. They can be large or small. They can be round if you don't want to do the oval. They could be teardrop shape. He looks a little lonely. Poor guy. Maybe he's just resting between hauntings. Now, I did make my ghost holding a flower. So before I wash the black off the brush, I'll talk about that. I thought it would be really cute for this ghost to be holding a tiny little flower, because if you look at the size of the mushroom, obviously this is like a forget-me-not or something small like that, baby's breath. Or it's a gigantic mushroom. I thought about different things that could be done here. I thought having it hold a little lantern would be really adorable. So that's an option. And if, let's say I wanted to do that, I'm going to show you, because I'm buying drying time now anyway. So I've got this hand here. If I were doing a lantern, I would take black and I would make this little loop come down. So it's like an oval that goes one side's in front of the arm and the other side's behind the hand, I should say. And then I would make this into a little rectangle or square. I would paint this yellow and then outline it with black. And then I'd probably just do like something fun like that, like a little X. So this is a very simple lantern. And if you do that, you will want to paint some yellow highlights on the ghost around the lantern light, because this lighted area would cast light out here, 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 and also under the hand. So that's a really cute idea. The flower is the most simple. Alternatively, let's say I'll draw the ghost over here. So we've got our cute little guy here. Got the hand, little eyes. You could do a pumpkin in the lap. Let's see here. Maybe, how about a pumpkin, like a trick-or-treat basket? So do that same thing that we did with the lantern. Then at the top of this, I'm going to do a flat oval like that, because we're literally just seeing the top skim view of this jack-o'-lantern trick-or-treat bucket. Then I'll round that out. And black eyes. You'd fill in the pumpkin with orange. Don't have room for a mouth. That's okay. So that's an idea. If you were doing it this way, maybe sketch everything out with orange and fill it in. Then let it dry. Once it's dry, you can sketch the outlines in a dark color. Maybe the orange mixed with black, or you could use solid black if you want. But those are such cute ideas. But we're going to keep it simple. Go with the flower. So I've got the black on my brush. I think I need to redip that. It's probably dried a bit. And what I do first is I put the stem underneath, coming out the bottom. And then I try to sort of float over. Here's about where it would be coming out of the top so that they line up as close as possible. And now I'm going to wash my brush, and I want that black stem to dry before I attempt to paint a flower, because I will get black mixed in with it. So while that dries, we can do the stars. Now in one of the earlier videos, maybe both of them, I did all the stars and these little white dots using the tip of the bristles of the brush. And when I was making this one, I was like, what would happen if I used the handle? Because I always have had problems with the stars being enormous when you use the handle of the brush. But these little brushes in our pack, they have a really pointy handle, so it actually works perfect. One thing I'll do is I'll stamp it in the white, and then I'm going to dot a couple times on the palette, and then just dot stars until I run out. And as your brush handle is running out of paint, these stars get tinier and tinier. So it is making them random in size, which is what we want. We don't want them all equal in size, because when you look at stars in the sky, they're not. There's ones that are further away and smaller. But every time you dip this handle in the white, you want to stamp it a couple times on whatever palette you're using. And I just cluster the stars together. So if you haven't already, and if you are on Facebook, please join our Facebook group page. It is not the GoBox Art Crate business page, which is just called GoBox. The group page is called GoBox Art Crate, so it's the full title. And it's one of those pages you have to click to join. And we have, I don't know, we must be getting close to a couple hundred members or so. And everybody posts, not everybody, but a lot of people post pictures of their completed paintings. And I would love to see these. I would love to see if any of you do the lantern or the jack-o'-lantern or anything else. And you could do a little dangling spider. Creativity is endless. I would love to see what you guys do. So if you feel comfortable joining the page and posting pictures of your art, everybody on there is so incredibly supportive. I have not run into, knock on wood somewhere, I have not run into any negativity on there at all. Okay, so I left this area without stars. You could put stars down there, but we're going to be putting these little fireflies if you decide to do that. So there's no need to put stars down there. They'll just all sort of collide together anyway. So what I'll do really quick is before this dries, I want to get a little more shading in here because I had that one area that was not accepting paint. It was being tough. A little stubborn area. And now I'm going to soften that edge with just the orange like we did earlier. It's just a repeat of that same process. I've got glare, so I'm going to tilt this so I can actually see what I'm doing. I've got this great light here that's a softbox light, so it doesn't, it's more filtered, but yeah, for me, it casts a little bit of glare. All right. Now while that dries, which should only take a few minutes, that's just enough time for me to work on the flower. I kept it very simple and easy. I did pink because we really don't use pink throughout here at all. So that's why I have such a tiny dot of pink on my palette. I'm going to mix a little white with it just to brighten it up a bit. And I like to do a 5-petaled flower. So at the top, I just do one little petal that's going straight up and then one on either side. So think of it like a star shape. And then one on either side on the bottom. I'm just pulling out from the center, and I'm going to put a little yellow center in this in just a bit. You can do any kind of flower, though. If you're one of those people that magically paints roses amazing, do a little tiny rose, whatever you want. You could do a black flower. Make it goth. All right, so I'm going to now dot a little yellow in here. Super cute. I love how different they look. Like this one has a little bit narrower head. This one's a little more slouchy. This is me. Totally slouchy. Sitting there at the end of the night, processing my day, Okay, so now the fireflies I did a little bit different than the stars. There's a couple ways you can do them. So I used yellow in the handle of the brush again. I dipped it in. I'm going to stamp a couple times. Stamp a dot, and then you can use your fingertip and literally just kind of splay it out, that dot. So let's do a couple here. So see that? And you can, because you get wet paint on your finger, you can do several of these. Or the other way you can do it is you can take and you can stamp a dot right on your finger and just dab it on there. The key here is to not make them evenly spaced. Make maybe some plain dots so that aren't smudged out. And you can go crazy with it, or you can do just a few. You do want to do some over the bottom of the ghost, maybe coming up in here just a bit. And also over the bottom of the mushroom. Leave this area here along the edge though, because I want to do a highlight there. Probably should have done that already, but you know, hindsight. Cute. Very cute. So before I forget, let's do the highlights on the mushroom. So I'm just going to take a little white, just a small amount. You don't want much here because it is the most subtle highlight. And think about the moon cutting through and just highlighting this bottom edge here. And then same over this back area. We get a little backlighting going on there. Cool thing is, if you don't like what you did with the highlight, you can always mix the color back and go over it again. Mix like the base mushroom stem color and go over it again. Okay, last but not least, we're going to put some spots on the mushroom. I think these are called something like tubercles or something. Kind of funny. But you can do, let's see. Let me grab my paper and pen here. You can do, here, I'll just draw a quick mushroom. I did a lot of little ones close together, and then on the sides, I bumped them out so that they are raised. If you guys did Paul's Moonshrooms painting last year, it's basically what he did there. The other thing you can do is you can just do these big polka dots. And keep it simple that way. So keep that in mind. Any color you want. I chose white. I almost wonder if I should do a different color though, because I feel like the white dots maybe compete with the stars a little bit. So you know what? I'm going to be different here. I'm going to do pink because it's going to maybe tie in with the flower a little. You need to mix up a little more. I'll be the guinea pig here and we'll see what it looks like. Good thing I'm almost done because my paint is reaching the end of its life. It's getting kind of thick as it's sitting here drying. I'm going to actually mix a little water in here. Okay. So I'm going to do little pink dots. I do like the raised ones on the edges. So the tone of this pink is close to, even though they're different colors, is close to the tone of the orange. So like if I were to squint my eyes and look at this, those pink dots disappear a little bit. So they are going to be more subtle, which is kind of what I wanted. Because I feel like these compete with the stars just a bit. It's something I thought about later. Plus, it gives us the opportunity to use pink again. All right, yeah, so those are, I could actually make them a little bit lighter in color. Let's see what that looks like. A little bit lighter pink. They really do disappear. right. That is it for this particular ornament, our last in our series for Halloween. Yay! I think they're so cute together. Let's move this one out of the way. Those are super fun. Drag that string in the paint. This one, I did the Mod Podge and glitter the other day, and I was telling you guys during that video about how once it's all dry, you can take a dry brush and brush off any excess glitter that didn't adhere. It's kind of floating around in the background. So yeah, you can do that anytime. You might end up having to do it every year. I don't know. But that is it, other than stringing the string through, which I don't have any string with me right now. It's over there. But yeah, there's all three. Super fun. I enjoyed making these, coming up with the ideas. And I hope you guys enjoyed painting them. And I hope you guys have a wonderful Halloween. I've got at least one other project I'm going to do for Halloween that's outside of the subscription box. But also, if you aren't a subscriber, you can buy the individual project that we do in October's box, which is going to have a pumpkin, I believe, and be sort of Halloweenish. So keep that in mind. You can buy the whole box itself and have two projects for October, or you can just buy the one Halloween project that will be in there. We'll have them posted on our website shortly after we release the box. So that is it, and thank you for painting with me. Thank you for your support. Like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and we'll see you next time. Bye!